Hi guys, and welcome to this week's lyrical breakdown with me, your lady friend Bonnie. How are you guys doing? I'm doing okay. I have an eye infection, so I'll just get that out of the way before everybody comments down below. But I feel like I've been waiting long enough to be doing this lyrical breakdown, and I want to do this for you. So here I am, and I don't care that my eye is all messed up and gross. So yeah, I'm really excited to do this. This week I'm doing K-Rino's Annihilation of the Evil Machine. And this is the title track off of the same titled album, which came out August 23rd, 2010. And yeah, this is pretty an interesting song and an interesting song choice. And the song suggestion comes from Mr. K-Rino himself, because a few weeks ago, if you guys haven't already seen, we did have a discussion with him basically, and we asked him a bunch of questions, and I asked him if there was any song that he wanted to see me try to break down, and he gave me the suggestion, and we'll insert a little clip here. Well, you mentioned that you know a lot of like lyricists and things like that, and I make lyrical breakdowns on this channel actually, and I broke down your Valley of Decision. And so, is there a song that you would like to see me break down of yours or of anybody else's? That would be a good challenge.
Yeah, it would be a good challenge. I don't know. Try Annihilation of the Evil Machine, just the song, the title song on that album. Try that one. I'd be interested to see what you do with that.
All right, we'll do. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely like a really great challenge. Like, I'm excited to do it. It's a long song. It's 6 minutes, 22 seconds. So there's a lot to say, and yeah, I suppose that I should get into it as quick as possible. So I won't be like lollygagging too much this time. So we'll get right into it. Not playing the whole song. And if anybody who hasn't been here before, welcome. I'm no expert or anything at all like that. So yeah, this is just my opinion. I'm just breaking it down. Hey to K-Rino if you are watching. Yeah. So yeah, I'm excited. Let's get into it.
Beyond the best spell of sleep, it felt like something was being put on my head. I woke up and saw two.
Let's go with verse 1. Years before I ever existed, the war between the sadistic and the realistic had been predicted. The balance of the world's power shifted when artistic control was given to the wicked and lifted from the gifted. When I was born, a female mystic insisted she entered the room, leaned over my forehead and kissed it. Inside me, my assignments were listed. But I was never told this till I was older, fearing the risk that I'd resisted. So it sounds like right away, like there's like this mystic that's around. It sounds a little bit like Rafiki from The Lion King. I don't know. Let's get into it. So I think that before K-Rino was born, the fate's already been decided that he or that there would be a battle between those who use pain and humiliation, act ruthlessly in their lyrics, which I don't think he's a fan of necessarily, going down that like low route, versus like people who are realistic in their discussions, and they sing about like honest, true emotions, and about like what's really going on, and like true reflections of their lives. And at one point, my guess would be like capitalism had something to do with it. Those who were now in control and on top of like the music industry, and those who are greedy and just are in it to make money, they don't really have any talent. And those with the talent are the true artists that are left behind, which is, awful, right? Like you would hope that like the real artist would get the exposure and not just like the people who are in it for the money. So I think that's kind of what he's saying. Like, he's obviously like saying like, hey, I'm a true artist. I'm not in it for the money. Like, I'm doing it for the art form. And I think that that's like super clear in everything that he does. Personally. So someone that can see into the future and like people's lives, that's the mystic. And I was wondering if this was like a true story, like if there was actually like a mystic that he'd met at some point in his life and had said these weird things to him. wherever he was born and wanted to kiss him on the forehead, and thus transformed his mission, and he's the one that's going to change everything. And he didn't tell anybody about this memory that he remembered having this happen to him, about the list that's on his head, I guess, until he was older, because he didn't think anybody would take him seriously. So I think that's, usually like if something weird happens to you, like you don't want to tell people until you're older, until you've like reflected and be like, oh, was that weird? Or was that normal? Like, so I think it is like something that you would want to wait it out a little bit. The first composition I ever composed triggered a conscious thought probe that the mystic had enclosed. I folded in an agonizing pose. When it was over, I would hold the keys to expose the motives of the soul. Meanwhile, on the same side of the globe, a slow-going entity drove the masses to ignorance overload. I swayed inside my reclusive mode, and although this was strange, I didn't complain, though I blatantly noticed the change. So the very first song K-Rino ever wrote, he says, he was deep and prophetic. He folded over... so maybe he was feeling like aches or pains because of like the power that was being like expelled from him. But once the change had happened, he felt the freedom of his soul, getting out his aggressions in the intelligent way, and being like a powerful and positive force. Like that's basically what his intention is, I think. And at the same time, at a place not too far away, he's basically saying, and he kind of starts like into like another story, like kind of like a side story that's kind of going on at the same time. And it's one long verse, so he has to break it up in like an obvious way like this. Otherwise, I imagine it might get a little bit confusing if you're kind of just going on like with one verse and not breaking it up. So I think that's kind of interesting. And like a slow force started changing the way people think will cause people to remain ignorant. And I imagine that this means like mindless pop music, or like the dreaded like reality TV that there is, or even more like pointedly how news articles are created to like blow up and like distract the masses from like other serious issues, like maybe other things that could actually like affect your life. And so like they distract you from what's going on. So while all that's going on, he stayed at home, he laid low, and just because he took the time to learn and meditate, and like that's what he took this time and like grow inside. I imagine that I imagine like not just like him, but like world knowledge. And he noticed the change at how he felt differently from like the majority of like the masses that were like all like, yeah, let's listen to pop music, like that's fun. Like, people who are just kind of like go along with the flow, do whatever like the government tells them to do, or like whatever is exposed like just on Facebook or whatever, and maybe doesn't necessarily always research things. Like that's the key. That's the key, I think, is if you see something on Facebook or wherever, like I think that you should, before reposting it, before commenting on it, be like, what does that mean? Like, where is this from? Like, kind of look at the background of like where certain things come from and look them up. If you're about to like get all fired up over something, like look up the facts before you like comment, because I think that it's going to be better for you in your debate. Yeah, and I've always felt that it like was true in my whole life, that I've always kind of walked the path a little less traveled, which has made all of the difference. That's kind of like a Robert Frost quote, if anybody knows that. And I think that that's true. I think that's what he's saying. Like he's going to like walk a different path, and he's going to think differently than what everybody else thinks. And that's going to be the difference. Like he is going to be the difference. And I think that that's really important. And I think that most people should try to strive for that kind of lifestyle and like be a little bit different from what everybody else does. And who cares what they say, right? Life's short. You do you. Okay, so I'll just keep going. I started having recollections, nostalgic reflections of things that ignited mental resurrections. Now every audio-visual object we digest contributes to this gradual degenerative process. Nonetheless, I wasn't under stress. I just rested in convalescence. I saying that right? Convalescence. Sharpened my talents to soar beyond the best. Fell asleep. It felt like something was being put on my head. I woke up and saw two individuals at the foot of my bed. I feel like you like usually like kind of like get that kind of imagery of like aliens like coming to like abduct you when you're like asleep, right? That's like what I was kind of imagining. So he starts like reflecting, and he was using like his past experiences, and he like revives like those emotions and like the details about certain things and certain events. And that's how he's able to like tell his stories and like have like these like reflections and like memories, which I think is pretty cool. So like now everywhere in like mainstream media, basically like on the radio, the TV, the internet, basically everything that we digest, that's laid in front of us, and it's almost like unavoidable. Like I was saying, like Facebook and like these kinds of things are almost like unavoidable, like because everybody's involved, everybody's watching, and like it's a really easy way for people and companies and organizations to like target us. And all of this continues to make them like the mass populations essentially a little bit stupider or like ignorant, or they just kind of keep people dumb, and like that's how like the government is able to run things essentially. But since he doesn't play that game, he doesn't fall for all of that kind of stuff. He's feeling like relaxed and rested, and he's not stressed out about anything, and something so something that is looked at shamefully, but I think sometimes people just need to take a break. People need to like step away from like all that kind of stuff, and if they're feeling stressed out, and like especially from like social media, like sometimes people just go on like a hiatus and just like close all their Instagram, close their Twitter, close their Facebook, and won't open it. And like maybe they won't ever open it again. But I think sometimes like people just need that like reflection, or even just to like go on vacation and just get away from it in some way or another, go camping, do whatever, and just like put your phone down and just be yourself, just be with yourself, and not have to like depend on like that social media kind of presence that's always around us. So I think that's kind of like what he's talking about. And he works on his skills, and he gets even better. So he's not just like wasting his time doing all like the same stuff everybody else is doing. He's continuing to like educate himself, and he's practicing, and he's like honing in on his like talents and like what he does best and his skills. So I think that's really great. And then he talks about the fact that he kind of fell asleep, as we all do, and felt like something was done to his head. So he felt like something was like in his brain, like there was like a presence or something. And he wakes up, and there's two people like just kind of like talking to him kind of at the end of his bed, which is a little bit creepy, but let's find out what happens. So one said, "Listen, K-Rino, you've been chosen to fight the deadly force that germinated and rose in the night. All the knowledge that you'll need, I'll expose on this flight. What's up with this paralysis? You're frozen in light. Well, can you unfreeze me? And please be quick about telling me the reason why you come to seize me." He said, "I'm sure you've heard of the machine. Well, we've convened concerning its destruction, and we've chosen you to lead the team." So one of these messages basically says to him that he's been chosen to basically be like this warrior against this like catastrophic force. And everything you need, he'll teach you on the way, wherever they're going. And then he kind of asks like these people at the end of his bed to, he obviously wants to be, they have him controlled, right? And so they want him to stop, or he wants to stop being frozen and like controlled, I guess. Obviously, I guess they're using some sort of powers on him. And he just kind of wants to know why he's being taken away. And like the guy at the end of his bed, he basically tells K-Rino that, K-Rino knows about this like evil machine, this infamous machine. And like, obviously, like that's like the title of the song, of like the album. And so like his like the followers and the believers of this machine have chosen K-Rino to like lead their cause, to fight against this, and they want him to corrupt for them, I guess. Like that's what it is. It's all about the corruption. So, folks are going to die. You have no choice, so you better comply. I said, I was no one special. I'm just a regular guy. He said, that's a lie. You were born for this. Never deny. I looked in his eyes and said, okay, man, whatever. I'll try. 2 seconds later, I went from my room to on the craft inside the lab where I received training to run the staff. What seemed like one day of training had been a year. The mystic reappeared and said, no one must interfere. So the people or the aliens or whoever say that this is going to happen, so you better agree with them and not protest. And he kind of says like, yeah, but I'm not anybody special. And obviously they just kind of say that he is. And, we're all special. He's special. And then, he says he'll try. But, I'm not going to repeat the whole thing again. But just trying to explain kind of what's going on, I guess. So I'm guessing that they are aliens because he says that they're in a craft, a spacecraft. That's usually what I would imagine. And they're getting on the spaceship and he's, being taught the warrior training that he was promised or whatever. And really, I just imagine he's going to try to educate people and wake people up, which kind of reminds me of Boogie Down Productions and which we had also recently reviewed, something just to try to wake people up, give people the knowledge and to make better decisions to be something that they can be, to really fulfill their potential. So I'm guessing that there's a sense of time was warped or changed because maybe the time space continuum. I'm no expert on all that kind of stuff, but he says that time passed really quickly, a whole year passed in a day or whatever. And the spiritual mystic lady who was there when he was born, she appears again and warned that his destiny must be accomplished on his own and that he can't have any help from anybody else. So he says, I said, lady, I could be wrong, but I feel like I know you. She smiled, then said, you do, and at the proper time, I'll show you. As for the masses, there's a fate you'll have to save them from. Look at the people and how disillusioned they've become. The thought streams that this machine is filtering are ill-meaning and bewildering, and you have to kill this thing. You'll have to start with all of its compartments and execute mark hits on targets from Earth or orbit. After I listened, I started on my mission with one magician from the spacecraft. That's my assistant. So he's telling basically that the mystic, he shows up. He's like, hey, I feel like I know you. And then she kind of gives him the when the time is right, kind of line. She'll explain who she is and what's going on. But anyway, so back to business. She kind of gives him his mission. To save the majority of the people that are being corrupted and basically the music industry. And the issue is this evil machine and it must be stopped and it's just going to keep going and he's the only warrior. He's the chosen one. So it goes on basically to all the ways that he has to destroy the machine and points out that they have to be very, very careful and he has to be very precise. And he's starting his mission in the spacecraft, I'm guessing, and there's only one magician around. I didn't really get who the magician was or what was going on there, but I'm guessing he's referring to the mystic. Maybe that's the magician. She's a little bit mysterious. I'm not 100% certain though. So let's keep going. The first place he brung me had stunned me. When I saw living among me, 85% were already zombies. The school and the streets and the houses were doused with the venom of lying governments and sick media outlets. All intelligent thoughts that sprout get rerouted and ousted. I had to obliterate the whole outfit. But where was its station? We tried to pinpoint its location. With extrasensory perceptive navigation, 2 seconds after springing to action, I saw on the caption the giant shadow of a robotic contraction. So the first stop in this spacecraft is someplace on Earth that the majority of the population was already infected, and they were all acting dead, like zombies, kind of they're just kind of going along with things, they're obviously they're zombies, they're ill. And everywhere he looks, like the poison, I'm guessing it's like the poison is like the music or like the reality TV and like all that kind of stuff is everywhere. And it's like making everybody like sedated, I guess. And like everybody likes the same kind of music. And like they're all kind of like running their schemes and doing like shady business and everything else as well. And anyone that like differs, like anybody who says like, hey, like I like something different or whatever, they get like shut down and like pushed aside and put away even. And I think that's like often the case, unfortunately, when people like stand up against something against like the masses. Like it is very difficult to do that, and like you're often like pushed aside and not taken seriously. But he's not about that, and he goes to the source, and he tries to find out like where exactly like their like location is. And after figuring that out, he sees like the evil robot's like shadow, kind of like he sees the shadow, but he doesn't actually see the robot itself. So let's find out. I turned around and shockingly seen a technologically supreme object that no logic could possibly dream. Everything that it said was obscene, plus his head was a screen. It blasted at me with a red glowing beam. I blasted back with a shot of my own medulla oblongata, lava fire straight out of my bottomless dome. I heard a voice that made my hair raise. To paraphrase, it said, "We'll forever convey our wicked ways over the airwaves. You can't stop the rise. We were put here to deceive the wise. We're the ones who slay the truth and make people believe the lies." So he turned around and he finally saw this evil machine. But yeah, he didn't seen. Better grammar, please, K-Rino. But I get it that it rhymes, so I'll let it slide. So this huge and unimaginable, basically like just like monstrosity of like technological innovation is basically standing in front of him, and his head is just like a TV screen. So it's obviously something that's like, it makes me think of like something from like MTV. Like it makes me think of like the screen and like the lights, and I don't know, just something about it like made me think of that. But it also kind of made me think of like because he says that there's like this robot, basically, or evil machine that's just like, it made me think of the robot from the Jetsons. I'll just say that, if anybody knows what I mean. So it shot at him with basically like a laser gun with like a red light. So he pulls out his gun to like duke it out, basically, because he's trying to like battle it, right? Now the next line I was a little bit confused with. The medulla oblongata is part of like the human brain, and it's on fire. Like I wasn't really sure like what happened, but like I imagine like some sort of like head injury or whatever. I don't know. I didn't really know. But like it made me, like by the sound of like what he's talking about, it sounds like his brain is pouring out of him. So maybe, but I don't know. He keeps living, so I must be wrong. So he heard a voice that gave him goosebumps, and it said that they will continue to corrupt people through the airwaves, basically kind of like the news and like the media, basically. Yeah, so it's just going to keep going, like TV, internet, radio, etc., blah, blah, blah. And they don't try to stop them because this is what they were put on Earth to do. Like this, like their mission and like their job is to like destroy all the truth and keep feeding like these lies to like the majority of the population, which is terrible. So, made the world slaves so they don't defy it. To save it, I would try it. It was a modern day David and Goliath. This denial den that we resided in was multiplying. This Leviathan was trying to escape like the Poseidon. So every phrase that I'd ever spoken, I quoted, decoded, and overloaded his modem till it exploded. Great rhymes, right? When it blew up, I was glad and released it till I saw new machines forming from each one of the fragmented pieces. Now I gotta overcome the offspring, the children of them. I went from dealing with 1 to 1 million of them. So They've gotten everyone under control, and so there's no use basically in like them even trying to stop it, and him trying to stop it. And it's like a modern day telling of like the big guy fighting the little guy, but being clever and using his brain rather than having to fight. And like that's basically like the David and Goliath kind of situation. Small is also powerful if you just use your brain, basically. So him against like the people and that try to like control the mass media, basically. So the denials were growing in numbers. He talks about like Poseidon and the Leviathan, which are both like aquatic people, creatures, myths, whatever, mythical beings, I guess. And like talks about like Poseidon winning. And I'm guessing he's referring to like maybe himself, like he's like the one who's kind of killed like this like snake-like creature. I believe the Leviathan is like a sort of like a serpenty type of a creature, maybe like a dragon, or like makes me think of like the Loch Ness monster or something. But yeah, so that's why I think that he was like kind of referring to himself in that sense. But what he's decided to do was to bombard the world with all his words, and I think that's basically again like what K-Rino does. Like he releases like so many like his albums like all at once. He just keeps putting out music. He's just going to keep doing this. He's going to like keep like attacking basically the machine with his words. Yeah, until like basically the machine can't keep up with him because it's not made to be smarter and real. And have like real intelligence. And I think that's kind of like an interesting thing. So I think that he's happy to have blown it up. He's destroying all of this. And I think he's saying like instead of like dealing with one generation whose media was controlled by like one source, now he's having to deal with like a lot of like shitty people, like smaller people, maybe who are like taking over like the control of them. You know, maybe it's not the same thing as how it used to be with like the media and like the news and like the music industry. And like now it's kind of been like knocked down a little bit, and like there's all these like I guess like individuals who are taking over and like doing different things, and everybody's trying to be like the best producer and like have like the I don't know, everyone's just trying to be on top, I guess. So I'll just keep going. A whole army in the distance ahead, and prisoners of listeners trapped my assistant and said, I need a G719 skill gun. He said, I never heard of that. I said, I know, I just made it up. Go build one. Great. So he left and said, okay, I'll go get it. Just hold them off for a minute. 60 seconds later, he appeared with it. I snatched it with no time to study or test it. It consisted of one definite button, so I pressed it. Love it. So now there's like this armies, I guess, and they're fighting against one another, and he's supposed to be like the warrior. He's supposed to be the brave heart. Like he's going out there and he's like rallying everybody up, and he's trying to like go against what everybody else is believing and falling for, and like all these zombies who are just like brainwashed by like everything that like media tells them, and they don't think for themselves. So he's basically fighting against all of those people, and because they're, like I said, they're not thinking for themselves. And he's tapped on his assistant's shoulder and told him to make a G17 gun, which apparently refers to a biblical quote from Genesis. Let me just pull that up right now. I'll read that to you, but the quote is G17, Genesis 7, like colon 19. And the waters prevailed so mightily on the earth that all the high mountains under the whole heaven were covered. So I think that's I don't really know what that means, but I'm not really, maybe for sure one day I'll read like the Bible from cover to cover, but like I haven't done so yet. But and all of like the religious texts, I think that'd be like super, I don't want to say fun, but interesting. Something that we should all do. Why not? And, you know, all these texts are out there. So anyways, I think it's also referenced to like the numbers 7 and 19, which are like significant as well in Christianity and Islam, I believe, because I think he is like a follower of like kind of both, the Islamic nation, I believe. he's like one of like the 5%ers, I think. I don't know if I'm getting too many confused, but I think it's the 5%ers. So I would say that it certainly has to do with some like theology of some sort, obviously. Like I think there's obviously something that was inspired by. And this is like powerful to him, and it's a godly force. Basically, he's going to like conquer all. So he's basically like with his like love of God, and like he's got this power behind him. So he's going to win. And then he asks his assistant for like this gun that he like just made up. And then he tells him to like basically figure it out, which most assistants have been through. I can definitely speak for that. Whenever like your boss tells you, yeah, I just made it up, go get it for me, and yeah, you have to come back with something. So in like a second, like in a flash, he's back within a minute. Again, maybe it's like the time warp thing. Again, I don't know. So he grabs it from him and presses the only button that he sees on this weapon. So, and I guess we'll see what happens. So this is sort of like the break. Shots fired, people scream, K-Rino coughs, oh man. So it's basically just an explosion, and it's obviously dusty, and there's debris, and he's coughing, and he's in this like cloud of like explosion dust, right? So then we have like the second verse, which is like a little bit shorter. So I awoke in a cloud of smoke. I saw people. One of them stepped out of the crowd and spoke. It's so enlightening to be mentally redeemed, he said. I'm like, what happened? He said, look at all the machines are dead. Conscious thinking at the ultimate degree again. No more government, commercial, radio, or CNN. The gas released out of your weapon made the cameras fall, reversed the spell of the machine, and deprogrammed us all. I said, but there were millions. How could we persist to live? After the wisdom, everyone took the initiative. One by one, they were individually destroyed, but by everything with knowledge, all functions deployed. So he was knocked unconscious from like his powerful weapon, and people feel free, basically, like instantly free, like from like that like mental control that they were under. And he's shown that like all of like the machines are like, it's like, look, they're all destroyed, like they're all gone, like we, everything's, fine. And like, so he basically won. He destroyed them all. And like no governments can control people through like the news and through TV stations, which I think are also controlled not just by like the government, but like the rich and the elite and everything like that. Like those are the people who tend to like make our decisions. Just keep questioning, like who's behind that? Who's behind that? Like who's really behind all of it? Like everything. And I think that that's kind of an interesting thing to just keep researching and questioning who really made this decision. Like there's the face of somebody that makes the decision, and there's the whole backing of who is telling that person to make the decision. So yeah, it's not always what seems like is presented to us. So whatever was like released from the gun caused basically all the cameras to like just stop working, and like affected all of like the digital machines. So everybody kind of got their freedom, like maybe like the cell phones and the TVs and everything was just like cut down. And everyone either joined in with like the minority of truth and intelligence, like basically what he's trying to do, or they were killed. And he's basically saying like knowledge is power, I think, in this one. Yeah, he's like, think for yourself. Like if you kill off all these machines, who is left? It's just you and your brain. So you have to like figure it out. And I think that's smart. I think it's very good. So I'll finish this up a little bit. They sparked the process with cerebral brainwashing, narcotics, scientific control, anatomic, robots, melodic, hypnotics. The mystic then delivered my fate, waved and erased my memory, sending me back to my original state. You wonder how then was it told to y'all? The thought probe was never taken out. It recorded the whole battle and showed it all. Now future generations can say that they seen the total annihilation of the evil machine. I love this. This is such a good, it's like a poem almost. Like it's just like a great story that flows through. It's really interesting. So they washed out the control that the drugs or like the media, whatever, has over people. And like the mystic lady appears at the end, and she's kind of like, she erases his mind and like sends him back to like where he was, and just like you know, probably back in his bed where he was sleeping, you know, like just kind of like sends him back there. But then he says that like his memory has been erased, but then he's also saying at the same time like, well, how is the story being told to you? He's, you know, he's kind of like, I get, you know, he's obviously like saying like, oh, there's like something else that happened here. And those who like abducted him were basically like dumb enough to like leave like their like instruments in him or like whatever, and he was able to record the whole killing and the whole like annihilation of the evil machine as proof to the world that this once existed, and yet people became smarter once it stopped existing. And basically he's now able to warn like all the future generations to say no to the evil powers that try to corrupt you, and to be smarter than what they want you to be, and to think for yourselves and not just complacently go along with what you're told and what you see, and just assume everything is truth when it's just often propaganda or lies, or like you're like, well, where did this come from? Like, how is this truth? Like, like who else believes this? Like question everything. I think that's basically what he wants you to do. Like, keep asking questions, like keep questioning. And I love that. I think that's great. Like, so many rappers have said this, are basically saying the same thing. Like, be better, like be better people, like do better for your community, do better for yourself. Like, you'll feel better at the end of the day if you just like turn all of that technology and like that control off. Just like separate yourself from it, get back to nature, get back to like where you need to be, and focus on yourself. And I think like in a sense he's obviously tying in like religion to that as well. He's kind of like, go back to like your roots, and like go back to like your religion, and like think about like what you're believing and like why you're believing it. You know, it's not always, I don't know, it's really interesting. There's a lot to like take from that, but I think it really is, he's killing off like the mainstream junk basically that's propelled in our way. So that's pretty much it. That's the whole song. It's really interesting. There's a lot kind of like to get from it, and there's like a whole like, it's a well constructed story. Yeah, I definitely like thank you so much to K-Rino for this request in a sense. Yeah, I think it was really cool, and I hope you guys liked it as well. So yeah, I also just wanted to say thank you so much for our support from our patrons. If you guys have any interest in supporting us, there is all the information down below. So thank you especially to Linda Williams, Super Old School 1994, Ismail Gadamsi, Chris Prado, and Carl J. You guys like help make our studio better and make our show better, hopefully. So yeah, thanks again for you guys, and to K-Rino. We have like a Discord. I've got Twitter. We've got all the stuff. You guys know what to do. Like, subscribe, the usual. So yeah, I'll see you guys next week. And yeah, that's it. If you guys also want to see any other songs requested, just leave them down below, and I will get to them hopefully one day. So that's it. Thanks, guys. Bye.